Millionaire laughed at waiter riding his bike to work. 2 days later, he saved his company. Jason Wilson was pedaling his old bicycle through the streets of Chicago when he felt something he would never forget. The embarrassment burned his face like fire as he heard the laughter coming from the sidewalk. It was just another normal workday, or at least it should have been. That's when William Rothschild pointed directly at him, laughing loudly as if watching a comedy show. The millionaire businessman exaggeratedly gestured to his friends beside him, cracking jokes about people who still used bicycles to commute. "Look at this, everyone," William shouted, not caring who might hear. "It's the 21st century and some people still bike to work. What a sight." The words cut through the cold morning air like razors. Jason felt every eye turn toward him. Pedestrians stopped on the sidewalk, some laughing along with the businessman, others just watching the awkward scene. The white apron he wore under his torn jacket gave away his profession, making the humiliation even worse. William pulled out his phone and started recording, stepping closer to the bicycle while continuing his sarcastic remarks. "Guys, you have to see this. I'll show it in the club group later. Look at the state of our city." Nervousness took over Jason. His hands trembled on the handlebars and the bike began to wobble uncontrollably. The pressure of the stairs, the laughter, and the cruel comments made him lose his balance completely. The fall was inevitable. Jason crashed onto the pavement, scraping his knee and tearing his only pair of work pants. The bike landed on top of him for a few seconds as more people gathered to see what had happened. William laughed even louder, as if the fall were the grand finale of his morning entertainment. "Now it's even better," William said, still recording. "This will be the video of the week in our group." Jason quickly got up, checking if the bike wasn't broken. He couldn't afford repairs. His meager savings barely covered the rent for the small house he shared with his mother. Blood seeped through the tear in his pants, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation. Without a word, he got back on the bike and rode to work. William's laughter still echoed in his ears as he finally escaped that awful scene. He arrived at the Metropolitan Grill 20 minutes late, something that had never happened in his 3 years working there. The manager, Robert Johnson, waited at the door with an unfriendly expression. "Jason, what is this?" Robert asked, looking him up and down at the torn pants and injured knee. "You know we have standards here." "Robert, I can explain. There was an accident." "An accident? You're late, and on top of that, your uniform is a mess. Our customers will be here for lunch soon. How am I supposed to explain a waiter looking like this serving tables?" Jason took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He needed this job more than ever. His mother, Margaret, had recently fallen ill, and the cost of her medication had gone up significantly. "Please, just give me a minute. I'll go to the bathroom, clean my knee, and fix my pants with some pins. No one will notice, I promise." Robert shook his head. "Not happening, Jason. You're suspended for 3 days, and that's coming out of your paycheck. I can't tolerate this kind of carelessness." 3 days? "Robert, you can't do this to me. I support my mother alone. She needs her medicine. You should have thought of that before leaving the house like this. Come back on Thursday, and only if you look presentable." Jason felt the world spin. 3 days without work meant 3 days without pay, and now he'd lose even more money because of the suspension. How was he going to explain this to Mrs. Margaret? He pedaled back home with a heavy heart. The small house in Bridgeport had never felt so far away. When he finally arrived, he found his mother sweeping the tiny backyard. Margaret Wilson, at 62, still carried the natural elegance that had always defined her, even after years of working as a seamstress to support the family alone. When she saw her son arriving earlier than usual, she immediately knew something was wrong. "My son, what happened? Why are you back so early?" Jason told her everything. The humiliation on the street, the fall from his bike, the suspension at work. Margaret listened to every word in silence, watching the pain in her son's eyes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now back to the story. "Son, sit here with me," Margaret said, pointing to the small wooden bench under the grapevine. "I need to tell you something I've kept hidden for many years." Jason sat beside his mother, intrigued. Margaret rarely spoke about the past, especially the time when his father was still alive. "Do you remember your father worked at a tech company before he passed?" "I barely remember. I was so young when he left us." Margaret took a deep breath before continuing. "Your father, Daniel Wilson, was a brilliant man. He had a revolutionary idea for a business management system. He worked on it for years, developing it all on his own in his free time." "I never knew that." "He presented the project to the company he worked for, hoping for a promotion or at least some recognition. But what happened was different. His boss at the time stole the idea and registered it under his own name." A chill ran down Jason's spine. "Which boss, Mom?" "William Rothschild, the same man who humiliated you this morning." The silence that followed was as heavy as lead. Jason couldn't fully process what he'd just heard. The man who had mocked him on the street was the same one who had destroyed his father's dreams years ago. "Mom, are you sure about this?" "Absolutely. I recognized his name when he started appearing in the papers as a successful businessman. His fortune was built on your father's idea." Margaret stood and went to the bedroom closet. From an old box, she pulled out a yellowed folder. Inside were papers, sketches, and notes in tiny handwriting. "Your father kept everything. Every version of the project, every note, every meeting he had with Rothschild. He documented it all because he suspected something might go wrong." Jason took the papers with trembling hands. He immediately recognized his father's handwriting, even though he'd been a child at the time. The dates on the documents clearly showed Daniel Wilson had developed the idea long before William Rothschild claimed it as his own. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" "Because I wanted to protect you. I wanted you to grow up without the weight of resentment. But seeing you come home today, humiliated by that man, I can't stay silent anymore." That night, Jason couldn't sleep. Lying in his narrow bed, he stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything he'd just learned. The injustice hurt more than any physical wound. His father had been an honest, hard-working man whose life was destroyed by someone without scruples. The next morning, as he helped his mother with chores, they received an unexpected visitor. It was Victoria Rothschild, William's wife, an elegant woman in her 50s who seemed nervous and uncomfortable. "Mrs. Wilson?" she asked politely. "I'm Victoria Rothschild. May we talk?" Margaret nearly dropped her coffee cup. Jason stepped closer, protective. "Mrs. Rothschild, what brings you here?" Victoria looked around as if making sure no one else was listening. "I found out what my husband did to your son yesterday. I saw the video he recorded and was ashamed. I came to apologize in person." "Apologize?" Jason couldn't hide the bitterness in his voice. "Will your apologies give me back the dignity he took from me in front of everyone? You have every right to be angry, but I need you to know not everyone in the family agrees with his methods." Margaret studied the woman carefully. There was something familiar about her, but she couldn't place it. "Ma'am, may I ask your maiden name?" "Victoria Bennett. Why?" Margaret's face lit up with recognition. "Vicky? Victoria Bennett from the street by the school. Did you go to St. Joseph's High School?" Victoria's eyes widened. "Margaret? Margaret Thompson? My God, I can't believe it." The two women embraced emotionally. Jason watched, not fully understanding what was happening. "Wait, you two know each other?" "We were best friends as teenagers," Margaret explained. "We lost touch after we got married." Victoria sat at the small kitchen table, visibly moved. "Margaret, it's been so many years. You've barely changed. And this must be your son." "Yes, Jason, Daniel's son." Victoria's expression shifted immediately. Daniel Wilson? That's right, do you remember him?" "How could I forget? He worked at William's company for a while." The mood grew tense. Victoria lowered her eyes, clearly uncomfortable. "Vicky, do you know what your husband did to my late husband?" Victoria stayed silent for a long moment before answering. "Yes, I do, and I'm ashamed of it every day." Jason sat at the table, watching the two women carefully. "So you knew your husband's fortune was built by stealing my father's idea?" "I found out a few years ago when I came across old documents in the office. I tried to talk to William about it, but he threatened me. Said if I told anyone, he'd leave me with nothing. And that's why you stayed silent all these years. Jason's voice was heavy with disappointment. I know it seems cowardly, but you don't know my husband like I do. William is capable of terrible things when crossed. Margaret poured coffee for Victoria, trying to process everything. Vicky, why did you decide to come here today? Because I can't live with this guilt anymore. And because maybe I can help you in some way. Jason leaned forward, intrigued. How so? William is facing serious trouble at the company, problems that could destroy everything he built. And ironically, the solution might be tied to your father's original work. The afternoon passed quickly as Victoria explained the details of William's company's financial troubles. Apparently, a mistake in a major project had cost millions, and external auditors were investigating all company operations. The worst part is that important documents have gone missing from the office, papers that prove the legitimacy of several old projects. Without them, the company could be sued for plagiarism and fraud. Jason and Margaret exchanged meaningful glances. What kind of documents? Jason asked, feigning casual curiosity. Mostly the records of the management system that started it all. The original development files, meeting minutes, drafts. William is desperate to find them. When Victoria left, promising to stay in touch, Jason turned to his mother. Mom, did you realize? The papers she mentioned are exactly the ones we have here, son. Your father's original documents. That night, Jason stayed up late organizing all the papers his father had left behind. Each document told a part of the story. The first ideas scribbled on napkins, the detailed sketches, the notes about meetings with William Rothschild. One document in particular caught his attention. It was a letter Daniel had written but never sent, addressed to the company's legal department. In it, his father expressed his suspicions that William was stealing credit for his work. Jason felt a mix of sadness and anger. His father had died young, carrying the bitterness of betrayal by someone he trusted, and now, years later, fate had placed in Jason's hands the chance to set things right. The next morning, they received another unexpected visitor. This time, it was a short man with thick glasses who introduced himself as Harvey Simmons, an accountant at William Rothschild's company. Can I speak with Jason Wilson? That's me. What do you want? Harvey glanced around nervously before answering. I heard you have old documents related to our company's management system. Jason's heart raced, but he kept his composure. Who told you that? Confidential information. What matters is, I can make you rich if you hand over those papers. I don't know what you're talking about. Listen carefully, kid. William Rothschild is offering $2 million to whoever brings back the missing documents. $2 million. Can you imagine what you could do with that money? The amount was truly staggering. Jason had never imagined having access to so much money. He could pay for private treatment for his mother, buy a better house, maybe even start his own business. And if I had those documents, how would we split it? Harvey smiled, thinking he had hooked Jason. 50-50, $1 million each. You give me the papers, I deliver them to William, and that's it. Everyone's happy. I need to think. You don't have much time to think, kid. Every day that passes, the company loses more money. If you take too long, the reward might shrink. After Harvey left, Jason talked at length with his mother about the offer. Son, I won't tell you what to do. You're a grown man, but think carefully. What kind of person do you want to be? $1 million, Mum. We'd never have to worry about money again. And could you live in peace knowing you got rich by helping the man who destroyed your father? Margaret's question echoed in Jason's mind for the rest of the day. He knew his mother was right, but the temptation of the money was overwhelming. The next day, Tuesday, Jason returned to work after his 3-day suspension. Robert barely looked his way when he arrived, still visibly upset about the earlier incident. The restaurant was slow as usual midweek. Jason served the few occupied tables automatically, his mind preoccupied with far bigger things than lunch orders. It was during the afternoon shift that Robert approached him with a strange expression. Jason, there's a guy here who wants to talk to you, says it's urgent. Jason looked toward the dining area and saw a tall, well-dressed man who seemed nervous. He didn't recognize him at first. "Can I talk to him?" "Sure, but make it quick. We still have work to do." Jason walked over to the table where the man waited. "You wanted to speak with me?" The man lifted his head and Jason nearly choked. It was William Rothschild, the same man who had mocked him on the street days before. Only now he looked completely different, devastated, desperate. You're the waiter on the bike?" William asked, his voice strained. "Yes, and you're the man who found it so funny to humiliate me on the street." William lowered his eyes, clearly ashamed. "I know I don't deserve it, but I need your help." Jason almost laughed at the irony of the situation. "My help? What could a millionaire like you possibly want from a simple waiter?" "Please, can you sit for a minute? I know I have a lot to explain." Jason looked around. The restaurant was nearly empty, and Robert was busy in the kitchen. He decided to hear what William had to say. "First, I want to apologize for what I did on the street. It was cruel and unnecessary. You didn't deserve to go through that. Your apology won't erase the humiliation I felt. I know that, but I need you to understand I'm being sincere. I made a terrible mistake." William took a deep breath before continuing. "My company is in crisis, a crisis that could destroy everything I've built over the years, and I've heard from reliable sources that you might have documents that could help me resolve this situation." Jason felt a mix of satisfaction and nervousness. It was strange to see this powerful man begging for his help. "What kind of documents?" "Old system development records, papers that could prove the legitimacy of projects being questioned by auditors." "And why would I have those documents?" William hesitated before answering. "Because I found out you're Daniel Wilson's son, and Daniel worked at my company many years ago." The mention of his father's name sent a wave of emotions through Jason. Anger, sadness, and a strange sense of power. "My father worked for you, that's true. But I think there's much more to this story than you're telling." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know exactly how my father developed that system. I know how you took credit for his work. And I know how you built your fortune on a stolen idea." William's face paled. "How did you—" "My father documented everything, Mr. Rothschild. Every meeting, every idea, every version of the project. He knew something was wrong." William fell silent for several minutes, absorbing the weight of Jason's words. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Justice. Public recognition that my father was the true creator of that system, and fair compensation for the family he left behind." "If you give me those documents, I can guarantee—" "No," Jason interrupted. "That's not how this works. You're not in a position to make demands." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now back to the story. William realized he had completely underestimated the situation. This young waiter wasn't just some random victim of his cruelty. He was the son of the man he had wronged years ago and now held the power to destroy or save his business empire. "What are you proposing then?" "First, a public confession acknowledging my father as the true creator of the system. Second, fair financial compensation for my family. Third, real changes in how you treat your employees." "You don't understand. If I do that, I'll be publicly admitting to fraud. I could be sued, lose everything." "You should have thought of that before stealing my father's idea." William stood up from the table, clearly frustrated. "I need time to think." "Take all the time you want, but know that every day that passes, your company loses more money, and I won't wait forever." That night, Jason came home emotionally drained. Telling his mother about the encounter with William was hard but necessary. "Son, you did the right thing. Your father would be proud. Sometimes I wonder if it wouldn't be easier to just take the money and be done with it. It would be easier, but it wouldn't be fair. And you know that." The next morning, Jason was awakened by the insistent ringing of the doorbell. Still in his pajamas, he went to open the door and found himself face to face with Victoria Rothschild, visibly agitated. "Jason, I need to speak with you urgently." "Mrs. Rothschild, what happened?" "It's about William. He spent the whole night pacing around the house, talking to himself, making phone calls. I think he's planning something terrible." Jason invited Victoria inside. Margaret made coffee while the woman recounted the details of what she had observed. He called people I've never even heard of. He kept talking about solving the problem and eliminating evidence. I'm afraid of what he might be plotting. Do you think he might try something against me or my mother? I don't know. When William is desperate, he's capable of anything. That's why I came here. You need to protect yourselves. Margaret stepped closer to Victoria. Vicky, what do you suggest we do? Hide the documents somewhere safe, and if possible, make copies. William must not know where the originals are. Jason spent the rest of the morning scanning all of his father's documents. He stored digital copies in several different places: flash drives, emails, the cloud. The originals were placed in a safe deposit box at the bank. That afternoon, while working at the restaurant, he received an unexpected call. Jason Wilson? Yes. Who's speaking? This is Dr. Michael Goldstein, attorney at law. I'm representing Mr. William Rothschild. He would like to schedule a formal meeting to discuss the situation regarding the documents. A formal meeting? That's correct. At the law office, with witnesses present, to ensure everything is handled legally. Jason sensed this could be a trap, but he also saw an opportunity to resolve the situation once and for all. Can I bring my own attorney? Of course. The more transparent the process, the better for everyone. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. Jason spent the next few days searching for a lawyer who could represent him. He didn't have money for expensive fees, but he managed to get in touch with a young, recently graduated attorney who agreed to take the case in exchange for a percentage of any compensation he could secure. Kevin Anderson was 28 years old and eager to prove himself in the legal world. When Jason told him the whole story, his eyes lit up at the possibility of a case that could define his career. Jason, what you have here is pure gold in legal terms. Your father's documents are solid proof for a lawsuit on intellectual property theft. But is it worth going to court against such a powerful man? Look, he may have money, but the law applies to everyone equally, and with this evidence, I'd bet on our victory. On Friday, Jason dressed in his best clothes, a slightly faded dress pants and a shirt he had received as a gift years ago. He arrived at the law office in downtown Chicago, accompanied by Kevin. The office was imposing, with expensive furniture and elegant paintings on the walls. William was already there, flanked by 3 lawyers and 2 other people Jason didn't recognize. Mr. Jason Wilson? Dr. Goldstein asked. Thank you for coming. Shall we begin? Everyone sat around a large wooden table. Jason felt intimidated by the formality of the setting, but Kevin gave him an encouraging look. Well, Dr. Goldstein began, we're here to discuss a delicate matter involving old company documents belonging to Mr. William Rothschild. We understand that Mr. Jason possesses papers that may be relevant to resolving pending issues within the company. My client possesses legitimate documents that belong to his late father, Kevin replied. Documents that prove the original authorship of a business management system. William remained silent, letting his lawyers speak for him. Our client is willing to make a generous offer to purchase these documents. $2 million, with no need to admit any past irregularities. Jason looked at Kevin, who subtly shook his head. My client is not interested in selling documents. He's interested in justice. What kind of justice? Asked Dr. Michael. Public acknowledgement of the original authorship of the system. Fair financial compensation for the damages caused to the Wilson family, and guarantees that similar situations won't happen again. The meeting lasted for hours. William's lawyers tried various approaches, veiled threats about lawsuits for extortion, increasingly larger financial offers, claims that the documents were invalid because they were too old. But Jason stood firm. He had justice on his side, and he knew it. Gentlemen, Kevin finally said, my client is being more than reasonable. The evidence we have is enough for a lawsuit that could cost Mr. Rothschild far more than $2 million. What evidence? Asked one of William's lawyers. Kevin opened his briefcase and began showing copies of the documents, date by date, version by version, meeting by meeting. The expressions on William's lawyers' faces gradually changed as they realized the strength of the evidence. These documents prove beyond doubt that Daniel Wilson developed the entire system before even presenting it to the company. We have dated drafts, personal notes, and even an unsent letter detailing suspicions of misappropriation. William finally broke the silence. "Mr. Kevin, may I speak directly to your client?" "Of course." William turned to Jason. "Are you sure you want to go down this path? A lawsuit will expose your family to a lot of pressure. The media will take interest in the case. Your life will be turned upside down." "Mr. Rothschild, my life was already turned upside down the day you decided to humiliate an honest worker on the street, and it was turned upside down 20 years ago when you stole my father's work. What if I agree to a limited public acknowledgement, without admitting fraud but recognizing your father's contribution?" "What kind of acknowledgement?" "A statement saying Daniel Wilson was a valuable collaborator in developing the system, a posthumous tribute, a donation to a charity in his name." Jason considered the offer for a few minutes. "It's not enough. My father wasn't a collaborator. He was the creator, and a charity donation doesn't make up for the years of hardship my family endured." The meeting ended without an agreement. William left, visibly frustrated, while his lawyers tried to calm him down. On the way home, Kevin was optimistic. "Jason, you did great. They're clearly worried about the evidence we have. It's only a matter of time before they give in." "And if they don't?" "Then we go to court, and with what we have, I guarantee we'll win." That night, Jason barely slept. The pressure of the situation was starting to affect his physical and mental health. He knew he was doing the right thing, but the weight of responsibility was immense. On Saturday morning, he got a call from Vicky. "Jason, I need to see you urgently. Something terrible happened." "What is it, Mrs. Rothschild?" "William found out I've been in contact with you. Last night he threw me out of the house. He said if I keep conspiring against him, he'll leave me with nothing." Jason fell silent, absorbing the news. "Where are you now?" "In a cheap hotel. I only grabbed a few clothes and left. I had nowhere to go." "Come to our house. My mother will be happy to have you." "I can't do that to you. You've already caused enough trouble." "Mrs. Rothschild, you're family to my mother, and family helps each other." Victoria arrived at Jason's house a few hours later, carrying only a small suitcase. Margaret welcomed her warmly, preparing the guest room that was rarely used. "Vicky, you can stay here as long as you need. William can't do this to you." "Margaret, I've been married to him for 25 years, half my life, and now I have nothing left. You have your dignity, and that's worth more than anything." That afternoon, the three of them talked at length about the situation. Victoria revealed details about William's personality that Jason hadn't known. "He was always controlling, but in recent years it got much worse. He forbade me from going out alone, having friends, or working. He said a woman in my position should dedicate herself only to family." "Do you have children?" Jason asked. "We couldn't have any, and William always blamed me for it, just another reason to humiliate me." Margaret held her friend's hand. "Vicky, you're still young. You can start over." "At 50? With no career, no money of my own?" "William controlled everything. I don't even know how much money we have in the bank." Jason realized Victoria was in a situation very similar to what his own mother had faced years ago. The difference was that Margaret had had to work from a young age to support the family, while Victoria had been kept in a gilded cage. "Mrs. Rothschild, you're entitled to half of the couple's assets. You can consult a divorce attorney." "With what money?" "William blocked my cards just yesterday. Kevin, who had practically become part of the family in recent days, offered to help Victoria as well. I can give you some basic guidance on divorce rights, and if needed, I can refer colleagues who handle pro bono cases." On Sunday, Jason decided not to go to Mass as he usually did. He needed time to think, to sort out his thoughts. He walked around the neighborhood, observing the simple yet dignified lives of the people around him. When he returned home, he found a black car parked out front. His heart raced, thinking it might be William or someone sent by him, but to his surprise, the person who stepped out was an elegant woman he didn't recognize. "Jason Wilson?" "Yes, that's me. My name is Jessica Parker. I'm an investigative reporter with the Chicago Tribune. I'd like to talk to you about William Rothschild." Jason What specifically about? I've heard you have relevant information about questionable practices at his company. I'm investigating a series of irregularities that may be much bigger than anyone realizes. I can't comment right now. I have a lawyer handling the case. I understand, but I want you to know others have come to our paper with similar accusations against Rothschild. You're not alone in this fight. Jessica handed Jason a business card. If you change your mind, call me. Sometimes public pressure is more effective than lawsuits. That evening, Jason talked to Kevin about the reporter's visit. It could be a good strategy, the lawyer said. If the case gains media attention, William will be in a tougher position to deny the facts. But won't it hurt our legal case? On the contrary, it could help, but we need to be strategic about when and how to release information. On Monday, Jason returned to work at the restaurant with his mind buzzing with possibilities. Robert noticed he seemed different, more distracted than usual. Jason, you've been acting strange lately. Everything okay at home? Everything's fine, Robert. Just some personal issues. Look, if you need a few days off... No, thank you. Work helps keep my mind busy. It was during lunch that day when Jason received a call that would completely change the course of events. Jason, this is Dr. Michael Goldstein. I need to inform you about a delicate situation. Yes, doctor, I'm listening. My client, William Rothschild, is in the hospital. He fell ill last night and was admitted with heart problems. Jason felt a mix of concern and confusion. Is he all right? Stable, but the doctors say it was caused by extreme stress. He's asking to speak with you. With me? Why? I don't know. I just know he insisted. Said it's about the documents. Jason hesitated. Going to the hospital meant facing William in a moment of vulnerability. He wasn't sure he was ready for that. Doctor, can I bring my lawyer? Of course, Mr. Rothschild said if necessary, he'll speak with whoever you bring. Northwestern Memorial Hospital was across town. Jason and Kevin took 2 buses to get there. On the way, they discussed strategies for the conversation. Remember, he's still our legal opponent, Kevin warned. Anything he says could be used against us later. I understand. But I also can't ignore the fact he might genuinely regret what he's done. William was in a private room, hooked up to several machines. He looked 10 years older than the last time Jason had seen him. Vicky sat in a chair beside the bed. Jason. Thank you for coming, William said weakly. How are you feeling? Like someone who might be living his last days, and it's made me rethink many things. Vicky stood when she saw Jason. He spent the whole night talking about you and your father. I think he finally understands the gravity of what he did. William tried to sit up, but the machines made it difficult. Jason, I want to make things right. Not for the documents, not for the company, for my own conscience. What does that mean? It means I'll publicly acknowledge your father was the true creator of the system. I'll compensate your family properly, and I'll change how I treat the people who work for me. Jason glanced at Kevin, who gave a subtle nod of caution. Mr. Rothschild, how can I be sure this isn't just a strategy because of your current condition? Because I'll put it all in writing, with witnesses, before I even leave this hospital. William took a labored breath before continuing. You know what hurts the most? It's not the possibility of losing money or the company. It's knowing I became exactly the kind of person I despised when I was young. How so? I also came from a poor family, Jason. My father worked in a factory. My mother was a maid. I swore when I grew up I'd never humiliate anyone because of their social class. What changed? Power, money, vanity. I drifted so far from my roots I forgot who I was. Vicky stepped closer to the bed. William, tell them about the other employees. William lowered his eyes, visibly ashamed. Your father wasn't the only one. Over the years, I took credit for ideas from several employees. I always justified it because I owned the company. Jason felt a wave of sadness and anger. How many families had been hurt by this man's greed? And now, what will you do for those other people? I'll identify every case I can remember, and I'll make amends. even if it means selling everything I have. The conversation at the hospital lasted nearly 2 hours. William shared details about how he'd taken credit for Daniel Wilson's work, admitting he knew exactly what he was doing at the time. "Your father was brilliant. The system he created revolutionized business management. I knew that if I implemented that idea, it would be a success, but I also knew he deserved all the credit. And yet you decided to steal it? I decided my ambition was more important than justice. It was the worst decision of my life." When they left the hospital, Jason was emotionally exhausted. Kevin was cautiously optimistic. "He seems sincere, but let's wait and see if he keeps his word. And if he does, what happens to our legal situation? If he makes the proper reparations voluntarily, we won't need a lawsuit, but we'll keep the evidence stored just in case." In the following days, William kept his word. Still in the hospital, he dictated a formal statement, recognizing Daniel Wilson as the true creator of the management system. The document was notarized with witnesses. He also established a $2 million fund to compensate the Wilson family for the years of injustice. But what impressed Jason the most was seeing William personally call other former employees who had been wronged over the years. The story leaked to the press through journalist Jessica Parker. Within days, the case gained national attention. William Rothschild, the millionaire businessman who had taken credit for employees' ideas, was making public reparations. Public opinion was divided. Some praised his willingness to admit his mistakes and make amends. Others criticized him, saying it was too little, too late. Jason found himself at the center of attention he had never wanted. Reporters called constantly, asking for interviews. His co-workers at the restaurant looked at him with a mix of admiration and disbelief. "Jason," Robert said one morning, "you've become a celebrity. Are you sure you still want to work here?" "Why wouldn't I?" "Well, with all that money you're about to receive, you could do anything." Jason had thought a lot about it. The compensation money was truly life-changing. But he also knew that poorly used money could become a curse. "Robert, I enjoy working. Just because I'll have money doesn't mean I'll stop being useful." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 3 weeks after the hospital incident, William was discharged. The first thing he did was personally visit Jason's home to deliver the financial compensation documents. "Jason, I wanted to thank you in person. You could have completely destroyed me, but you chose a nobler path. I just did what I thought was right. It was more than that. You gave me the chance to redeem myself. Not everyone would do that." William had visibly changed. He dressed more simply, spoke more humbly. He seemed genuinely remorseful. "And now? What happens with your company?" "I'm handing management over to a professional team. I want to dedicate myself to social projects. Maybe then I can make up for some of the harm I've caused over the years." Vicky, who now lived permanently with Margaret and Jason, was present during the conversation. "William, are you sure this isn't just a passing impulse? Once you've fully recovered, won't you go back to how you were before?" "Vicky, I understand your skepticism, but what happened to me in the hospital was real. I saw my life flash before my eyes and realized I had nothing to truly be proud of." Jason watched the interaction between the former couple. There was tension in the air, but also a kind of mutual relief. "Mrs. Rothschild, how are the divorce proceedings going?" "Quite well, actually. William isn't contesting anything. He said I deserve half of everything." William nodded in confirmation. "It's the least I can do after so many years of control and manipulation." In the following months, Jason's life changed in ways he had never imagined. With the compensation money, he managed to pay for private medical treatment for his mother, who had been facing health issues that had been neglected due to lack of resources. He also bought a larger house in the same neighborhood, staying close to his roots. Victoria decided to live with them permanently, becoming like a second mother to Jason. William kept his promise to implement changes in the company. He created an employee recognition program for those who contributed innovative ideas, ensuring they would always receive proper credit and compensation. He also established an assistance fund for struggling employees' families, inspired by Jason and his mother's story. Jason decided to use part of the money to study business administration. He wanted to better understand the business world, but with a different perspective than William's. "Son," Margaret said one afternoon, "your father would be so proud to see the man you've become." "Mom, sometimes I wonder if I made the right choices. Maybe I should have been harder on William. You were fair, and fairness doesn't mean revenge. It means doing what's right." Victoria, who was cooking at the stove, turned to join the conversation. "Jason, can I tell you something about William that you might not know?" "Of course, Vicky." "After you confronted him, he spent weeks researching your father. He read every article, every document. He discovered that Daniel Wilson had received several academic honors before working at the company. I didn't know that. Your father was recognized as a genius in systems. William realized he hadn't just stolen an idea, he had destroyed the career of one of the best professionals in the field." The revelation moved Jason. He had always known his father was intelligent, but hadn't grasped the extent of his professional recognition. "That's why William was so shaken," Victoria continued. "He realized the magnitude of what he'd done." Months later, Jason was finishing his first semester of college when he received an unexpected invitation. William wanted him to participate in a lecture on business ethics at a prestigious university. "I'm going to tell my story," William explained over the phone. "But I think it's important that you tell yours too, from the perspective of someone who was wronged." Jason hesitated. Public speaking had never been his strength. "I don't know if I'm ready for this." "Think of the people who could benefit from hearing your story, young entrepreneurs who might learn not to make the same mistakes I did." Kevin, who had become a respected lawyer thanks to the case that had gained notoriety, encouraged Jason to accept. "Your story has the power to change minds. It's worth trying." The lecture took place in a packed room at the School of Business Administration. William spoke first, detailing how he had taken credit for Daniel Wilson's work and other employees' ideas. "I built an empire based on intellectual theft," he told a silent audience. "And for years I convinced myself it was justified, because I was the one taking the financial risks." When it was Jason's turn, his hands trembled slightly. But as he began speaking about his father, the family's struggles, and the humiliation he had endured, his voice grew stronger. "My father died young, carrying the bitterness of never being recognized for his work. But I've learned that justice isn't revenge. It's doing what's right, even when it's hard." The audience was visibly moved when Jason spoke about his decision to seek not revenge but justice and recognition. After the lecture, several students approached to ask questions and share their own experiences. A young businesswoman shared that she was going through a similar situation at her startup. "My partner is trying to cut me out of a project I developed," she said. "Your story gave me the courage to fight for my rights." Jason realized in that moment that his painful experience could truly help others. He decided to accept more invitations for talks and interviews. William also continued his journey of making amends. He created a foundation dedicated to supporting independent inventors and creators, offering legal protection and funding for their ideas. A year after their first meeting at the hospital, William and Jason began meeting regularly to discuss social projects. Their relationship had evolved from adversaries to something close to an unlikely partnership. "Jason," William said during one of these meetings, "I have a proposal for you." "What is it?" "I want you to be the executive director of the foundation. You have the perspective I never had, the experience of someone who's been wronged by the system." Jason considered the proposal carefully. It would be an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives, but it would also mean working directly with William. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But no, I'm not offering this out of guilt or pity. I'm offering it because you're the right person for the job." That night, Jason talked at length with his mother and Vicky about the proposal. "Son, you have to follow your heart," Margaret said. "Which work would bring you the most satisfaction?" "I like helping people, and at the foundation I could help many people in the same situation we were in." "Then the answer is right there," Vicky said. "William has changed, but even if he hadn't, that shouldn't stop you from doing good." Jason accepted the offer. In the following months, he worked hard to structure the foundation. He created mentorship programs for young inventors, legal defense funds, and partnerships with universities to identify emerging talent. The first case the foundation handled was similar to Daniel Wilson's. A young programmer had developed an innovative app, but his boss was trying to claim the idea as his own. "It's like history repeating itself," Jason told William. "But this time, we can step in on time." "That's what gives me hope," William replied. "Maybe we can prevent other families from going through what yours did." The case was resolved quickly. The young programmer kept the rights to his creation and even received an investment to develop the idea commercially. As the foundation gained recognition, Jason became a respected figure in the business world. He appeared regularly at conferences and interviews, always sharing his story as an example of perseverance and integrity. William, in turn, had become an example of corporate redemption. His genuine change inspired other business leaders to rethink their practices. 2 years after their first meeting, Jason was organizing the first national symposium on business ethics when he received an emotional call. "Jason, this is Professor Emily Thompson from the University of Chicago. We'd like to honor your father posthumously with an honorary doctorate for his contributions to management systems development." Jason felt his eyes fill with tears. "Professor, this is unbelievable." "Your fight to recognize his work caught our attention. We did thorough research and found that Daniel Wilson's ideas influenced an entire generation of business systems." The tribute ceremony took place in a packed auditorium at UChicago. Margaret, now 70 but still elegant, accepted the diploma on behalf of her late husband. "Daniel," she whispered, holding the diploma, "you finally got the recognition you deserved." Jason Wilson addressed an audience of academics, business leaders, and students, sharing the full story publicly for the first time. "My father planted a seed that grew far beyond what he could have imagined. Today, 20 years later, it's bearing fruit that benefits hundreds of people." William Rothschild was in the audience, standing and applauding along with everyone else. After the ceremony, he approached Jason. "Thank you for letting me be part of this story of redemption. William, you weren't just part of it. You created this story of redemption." In the years that followed, Jason's life continued to evolve. He married Rachel, a lawyer he met during a conference on labor rights. They had 2 children, whom they often told about the grandfather they never knew, but whose legacy lived on through the family's work. The foundation grew and became a national benchmark for protecting intellectual rights. Hundreds of inventors and creators benefited from the programs Jason developed. William stayed true to his transformation. He sold his company to dedicate himself fully to social work. No one ever saw him humiliate employees or act arrogantly again. Vicky started her life over at 55. She opened a small sewing school in their neighborhood, teaching the craft to women in vulnerable situations. Margaret lived to see her grandchildren grow up, always proud of the principled man she had raised. She passed away at 82, surrounded by family, certain that Daniel had been properly honored. 10 years after that first humiliating encounter on the street, Jason was riding his new bicycle along the same route where it had all begun. Now he wore a suit and ran a respected foundation, but he still preferred biking to work whenever possible. It was a way to remind himself of where he came from and the values that guided him. Along the way, he saw a young delivery rider being berated by the driver of an imported car. Jason stopped his bike and approached. "Hey, friend, are you okay?" The young rider was clearly shaken. "The guy in the car said people like me shouldn't be on the same streets as him." Jason looked at the driver, who had stepped out of his car. "Do you have a problem with honest workers?" "Who are you to interfere?" the driver snapped. "I'm someone who knows dignity doesn't have a price, and that humiliating others says far more about the person doing the humiliating than the one being humiliated." The driver laughed sarcastically. "Look at this. Another guy on a bike defending another guy on a bike. How touching." Jason smiled calmly. "You're right. I am another guy on a bike, and I'm proud of it." He handed his business card to the young rider. "If you ever need help with any labor issues, look me up." The driver peeked at the card over the rider's shoulder and paled when he saw the foundation's name. Jason Wilson. The Jason Wilson from the Daniel Wilson Foundation. That's right. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get to work." Jason got back on his bike and rode off, leaving the driver silent and the young rider with a smile on his face. This was how he liked to remember that his story had begun with humiliation but had turned into a force for good, and that every person has the power to choose what kind of mark they leave on the world. In the end, he realized true wealth wasn't in the 2 million he'd received as compensation, but in the chance to use his experience to make the world a little fairer. And every time he rode through the streets of Chicago, he carried with him the certainty that his father, wherever he was proud of the son who had built strong values, despite every hardship. The bicycle that had once been a symbol of humiliation had become a symbol of resilience, dignity, and purpose. And Jason Wilson, the waiter who saved a company through his integrity, kept pedaling toward a future where justice and humanity prevailed over greed and arrogance. The end of the story. Now tell us what you thought of this tale of redemption and dignity. Do you believe people can truly change like William did? Have you ever witnessed situations of humiliation at work? Leave a comment sharing your experience. If this story touched your heart in any way, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other inspiring stories that show the power of integrity and perseverance.